members. You know, it's kind of an honor to do this. I thought about the 4 members that we lost. The order that I'm going to speak on them is not the order that's in the program, but just kind of sharing what they had meant to me, or what I thought about when I thought about them. So bear with me, I'm kind of different. So here goes. In 1973, Bob Bell was manager of the Big B supermarket down on University Avenue. He had a big sale on whole chickens. And, you know, the world was not a vegan back in them days, so come Saturday morning, we were running out of chicken. So Bob Bell goes and grabs a 17-year-old stock clerk, and he says, "You come with me, we need to go get some chickens." So I get in the truck, and we drive, and we're going to go to, to Bill Molla's, independent dressed beef. And I said, "Oh, I didn't know that's where we got our chickens." And he said, "We don't. That's not our supplier, but there are suppliers not available. We're in trouble." Somebody told me to call Bill Molla. I did, and he said he'd come down and open up and help us out. So that's the first time I met Bill Molla. In 1979, Morgantown Rotary Club came to Westover to start a club and said, you know, we want to open a Rotary Club, and Bill Molla was there to help out. Our club was formed, and Bill Molla was a charter member, and he never left. He was dedicated, and he was loyal. According to Rotary International, Bill served 2 terms as our leader and president. But I can tell you he served many terms as our president and leader. In about 1993, I was the president of the club, and I'm going to tell you, I leaned on Bill Molla. I'm sure Derek Smith leaned on Bill Molla. I'm sure Mike DeProspero leaned on Bill Molla. He was always there for us. He was a generous, caring man, and he had a generous, caring heart. How many Christmas parties did we have at his place and he hosted? How many years did we hold our elimination dinner at his banquet center? How many times did he open up his place for us to wrap gifts? When we have our next elimination dinner, let's see how much it cost us. And then we'll know how much money he saved us, how much of his money that he donated for us and for the children. You know, when you go to the bank on Monday and you find out that Western Sizzling's closing that day, and that's where you meet on Wednesday, and you go, wow, what are we going to do now? Bill Molla had the answers. Bill Molla provided the place. When you had problems, that's what I remember about Bill Molla. He solved problems, but he had a generous, giving heart. 2,000 years ago, Jesus told us that we couldn't ascend into greatness. That to be great, you had to descend. John Koval took him at his word. Rotarian John Koval never stood in front of you as your president. John Koval never led any committees. After the Christmas party, Amy Beth did not have to go home to see if John Koval was going to be on TV when they interviewed him from Channel 12 News. John Koval was never interviewed by newspapers. You see, John Koval was too busy descending into greatness. When you came to the Christmas party, John Koval was just standing there making sure that every child had macaroni and cheese. Never left his post. Never stood in front of anybody. Never seeked notoriety. John Koval, when you came to the dinner, was just standing behind the bar, making sure that everybody had their beverages. John Koval served. John Koval was the man that when you had, with the old Rotary days, when we did the blood analysis and there had to be 10 or 12 of us, John Koval was the guy, he'd stand at the end and he would put the Band-Aid on everybody's arm. He was a healer. He was making them better. When John died, Carol told me that John loved Rotary. I think Amy Beth saw the love that John had for Rotary, and that's why she volunteered and came with him to the Christmas wrappings, to the Christmas parties, and always to assist. She was like her dad, so willing to assist. John did love Rotary, and John believed in Rotary. had a funeral today with the Masholi family. The Masholi family donated some land to build a ballpark, a baseball park. And I was talking with them about it, and I said, well, how's it going? Well, you know, they're trying to get materials, and you know, it's struggling. And I said, well, you know, West Virginia had a good baseball team this year, and they kind of drive athletics around here, and maybe with that, that'll renew some enthusiasm. And they said, well, what we could really use is when they build that park, we could sure use some of their old equipment. But you see, with WVU, you can't get their old equipment. They won't give it to you. And I said, let me tell you about a man that I know. Let me tell you about a man that I knew. When Hazel Ruby gave the money for the hospital, and they built the new hospital, Ruby Memorial, George Smith said, what about the old beds in the old hospital? What's going to happen to them? Well, I don't know. When you move into a new hospital, you got to have new beds. So George investigated and found out and got him, talked them into the beds. Well, what are we going to do with them? What are we going to do with all these beds? George found a Rotary club in the Philippines that needed beds. He arranged for ships from out of Baltimore to transport them to the Rotary Club. He arranged for trucks to go to meet us at Ruby and haul the beds to the loading dock, to the harbor. And of course, he recruited us to load them. George could dream big. George dreamed big. George lived Rotary. George was probably the longest serving member in Rotary. He wasn't the longest serving member in our club. That would have been Bill and John. But George belonged to Rotary before he came here. So he probably served more years. And, you know, the thing I remember is when I was president, we had a member develop a muscular disease. So here you are on your second floor and you can't get out. Now you're bound in your house. And I thought to George, I said, could we build a ramp? And George said he couldn't build it, but he could design it. And he designed a ramp. And we all got together and we built it so that this man could leave his home. He was a member of our club. He was a charter member, Junior Neely. So that's what I remember about George. Also that he produced a newsletter that I'll get back to later that, you know, he always kept us apprised of what was going on in the club, and always had a word that you could use and learn what the meaning of it was. Now, give me a little freedom here. This is in the Dickens novel, A Tale of Two Cities. It was described as the best of times and the worst of times. Arnold, Eddy, and Rotaries fit that. When the club was formed, they came to Arnold to ask him to be a member. And, you know, like a lot of us, he didn't do it. He said, oh, I got something else, you need to put it off. And that was in '79. So I guess that would be the worst of times. So some years later, after I was in Rotary for a while, I kept saying, you know, you might want to give this a try. You might want to do this. I really enjoyed that. So he came on board to see. And when he came on board, he jumped in like nobody has ever seen. The best of times, definitely. When he believed in something, he put his heart and soul into it. Arnold believed in the betterment of the community. He believed in helping the less fortunate, and he believed that Rotary was a terrific vehicle for accomplishing this. He is the only member of the Westover Rotary Club to wear two titles, President and Greeter. I don't like the term greeter because that kind of boxes him in. He was more than a greeter. I mean, he greeted the people, the visitors, and everything like that, but he was more of an ambassador because an ambassador takes Rotary outside the walls, and he did that better than anybody. He sold more tickets to any of our events than anybody else because he took Rotary outside. He gave it to the opportunity in the community, and the community benefited from it. He took pictures of all the kids at the Christmas party because he knew they were having hard times. And he wanted them to have a nice memory instead of the memories probably that most of them have of want and need. There's, back in the 1800s, I'm guessing, there was, in the Texas fields, The cattlemen always ran their cattle. And you just kind of just went out in the fields and ran your cattle wherever you wanted to. And then you herded them up and you did whatever you want. And as more and more people came along and started having cattle, their herds started mingling. And they were having troubles and they were getting into arguments. And whose steer is this? Well, no, that's my steer. No, Curtin says it's my steer, you know. So they had to come up with an idea of branding. So that when they would meet all the kids, so when they get the herd of cattle all together, and they'd say, well, whose brand is this? Whose brand is that? Well, if you came upon one and it didn't have a brand, they said, well, that's John Maverick. John Maverick won't do the same things that we do. He won't brand his cattle. So that's where the term Maverick came from. And I always remember that from George. I learned that many years ago from George. That's where Maverick, because he just didn't follow the rules. He was a little different than anybody else. Now to the newest members. The members I just mentioned have written their pages in the book of Rotary. They have turned it over to you and us. They are entrusting you with its future. Now it's your turn to write. There are people with needs waiting to see if you can meet them. They realize there is a world of joy and happiness awaiting those who help others. They realize that joy and happiness because they helped others. Will you be like them and do more than just join a club? I believe this group can not only write a page of Rotary, but can fill a book. Remember the characteristics of our predecessors. Have a generous and caring heart. Be willing to descend into greatness. Dream big. Be an ambassador for what you believe in, and it never hurts to have a little maverick.